The morning sun painted the Scottish Highlands in golden hues as Catherine stepped out of the sleek black car. Her breath formed small clouds in the crisp autumn air, and she pulled her stunning blue check coat closer around her shoulders. The coat, a masterpiece of tailoring, caught the light perfectly as photographers captured every angle. William emerged beside her, his face brightening with the genuine smile that always appeared when they visited Scotland. Catherine had always felt a special connection to Scotland. It was here, at the University of St. Andrews, that she and William first met as young students. Those early days seemed like a lifetime ago now, filled with late-night study sessions, casual walks through the cobblestone streets, and the gradual blossoming of what would become one of the world's most watched love stories. Today, they returned not as students but as the Prince and Princess of Wales, carrying the weight of royal duty and the hopes of the Scottish people. The blue check coat had been carefully selected for this tour. Catherine's stylist had worked for weeks to find the perfect piece that would photograph beautifully against Scotland's dramatic landscapes while remaining respectful of local traditions. The coat featured subtle tartan influences that paid homage to Scottish heritage without being too obvious. Every detail had been considered, from the cut that flattered her figure to the color that would stand out against the autumn foliage. Their first stop was a small village school in the Highlands, where children had been waiting excitedly for weeks. As their convoy approached, Catherine could see dozens of small faces pressed against classroom windows, their eyes wide with anticipation. The headmaster, Mrs. MacLeod, had been preparing for this visit since the summer. She nervously straightened her best dress and checked her watch for the 100th time that morning. When Catherine and William stepped through the school gates, the children erupted in cheers. A young girl named Emma, no more than 7 years old, stepped forward with a bouquet of heather that she had picked herself from the nearby hills. Her hands trembled slightly as she offered the flowers to Catherine, who knelt down to accept them at Emma's eye level. "These are the most beautiful flowers I've ever received," Catherine said warmly, and Emma's face lit up with pure joy. The moment was captured by photographers, but what they couldn't capture was the genuine warmth in Catherine's voice, or the way she made each child feel like the most important person in the room. The tour of the school revealed the challenges facing rural education in Scotland. The building was old but lovingly maintained, with teachers who worked tirelessly despite limited resources. Catherine listened intently as Mrs. MacLeod explained their programs for supporting children from remote farming communities. Some students traveled over an hour each way to attend classes, their dedication to learning evident in their eager faces. In one classroom, Catherine joined a group of 8-year-olds working on a project about local wildlife. She sat cross-legged on the floor, her elegant coat spread around her like a blue check puddle, as children excitedly showed her their drawings of red deer and golden eagles. One boy, Jamie, had drawn a picture of what he thought the royal visit would look like. In his artwork, Catherine wore a crown made of heather, and William carried a shepherd's crook. "That's exactly how I feel today," Catherine laughed, admiring his creativity. The children giggled with delight at her response, and even the most reserved among them began to open up. She helped them with their artwork, offering gentle suggestions and praising their efforts with the enthusiasm of a favorite teacher. Meanwhile, William was in the school's small library reading stories to a group of younger children. His animated voices for different characters had them laughing and clapping with glee. The librarian, Mr. Stewart, watched in amazement as the future King of England brought beloved storybook characters to life with the skill of a professional performer. As the morning progressed, Catherine and William learned about the school's innovative programs. Despite its remote location, the school had embraced technology, using video calls to connect with students from around the world. The children proudly demonstrated their virtual exchange program with a school in New Zealand, chattering excitedly about their international pen pals. The school lunch was a revelation. Catherine and William joined the children in the small dining hall, eating shepherd's pie made with locally sourced lamb and vegetables from the school's own garden. The cook, Mrs. Morrison, had been worried about serving such simple fare to royalty, but Catherine's enthusiastic compliments about the meal's freshness and flavor put her completely at ease. During lunch, Catherine learned about the daily challenges these children faced. Some came from single-parent homes where parents worked multiple jobs to make ends meet. Others lived on remote farms where internet connectivity was spotty at best. Yet their resilience and optimism shone through every conversation. They spoke about their dreams with the same confidence as children from the most privileged backgrounds. One particular student, Sarah, caught Catherine's attention. The 12-year-old had written a poem about the Highland landscape that displayed remarkable talent for someone so young. Sarah's teacher explained that the girl had overcome significant personal challenges, including her father's recent illness, yet continued to excel academically and support her younger siblings. Catherine spent extra time with Sarah, discussing her writing and encouraging her to continue developing her talent. She promised to send some books from the Royal Library that might inspire the young poet. Sarah's eyes filled with tears of joy, and Catherine gently placed a hand on her shoulder, offering words of encouragement that would stay with the girl for years to come. The school visit concluded with a small ceremony in the main hall. The children had prepared a special performance featuring traditional Scottish songs and dances. Catherine and William were invited to join in, and despite their formal attire, they participated enthusiastically. Catherine's blue check coat swirled gracefully as she attempted a Highland reel, much to the children's delight. As they prepared to leave, the entire school gathered outside to wave goodbye. Children hung from windows, teachers stood in doorways, and even passing villagers had stopped to catch a glimpse of the royal couple. Catherine and William took their time, ensuring they waved to every face they could see. The impact of their visit was immediate and profound. Mrs. Disson MacLeod later said it was the most special day in the school's long history. The children talked about nothing else for weeks, their confidence boosted by the attention and encouragement they had received. Several local businesses, inspired by the royal visit, reached out to offer additional support to the school's programs. As their car pulled away, Catherine reflected on the morning's experiences. The children's enthusiasm and resilience had reminded her why these visits mattered so much. Beyond the photographs and media coverage, these moments of genuine human connection were what made royal duty meaningful. The blue check coat that had seemed so important that morning now felt secondary to the memories they had created. Their next destination awaited, but the warmth of the school visit would stay with them throughout the remainder of their Scottish tour. Catherine gazed out the window at the passing Highland scenery, already planning ways the Royal Foundation could better support rural education initiatives. William reached over and squeezed her hand, sharing her sense of purpose and determination to make a real difference in these communities. The day was just beginning, and already it had exceeded all expectations. Scotland had welcomed them with open arms, and they were determined to return that warmth and affection throughout their rapid-fire tour of this beautiful, resilient region. The blue check coat had indeed dazzled, but it was Catherine's genuine care and compassion that had truly captured hearts. The afternoon brought a completely different atmosphere as Catherine and William arrived at the ancient stone walls of Edinburgh Castle. The fortress stood majestically against the cloudy sky, its weathered stones holding centuries of Scottish history within their embrace. Catherine's blue check coat billowed gently in the Edinburgh wind as she stepped onto the cobblestones of the Royal Mile, her heels clicking rhythmically against the worn stones that had witnessed countless royal processions throughout the ages. A crowd had gathered despite the short notice of their visit, their faces pressed against the barriers that lined the narrow street. Catherine waved warmly, her genuine smile lighting up her face as children called out her name and adults held up their phones to capture the moment. An elderly woman in traditional Scottish dress caught her attention, clutching a small Scottish flag and beaming with pride. Catherine made a point of walking over to speak with her, learning that she was 93 years old and had been waiting since dawn for this opportunity. "I've never missed a royal visit to Edinburgh," the woman, Margaret, told Catherine with twinkling eyes. "I was here when your late mother-in-law visited, as a young woman, and I wouldn't miss seeing you for anything." Catherine was deeply moved by Margaret's dedication and spent several precious minutes chatting with her about the changes she had witnessed in Edinburgh over the decades. Inside the castle grounds, they were greeted by the commanding officer, who led them on a tour of the crown jewels. Catherine stood mesmerized before the ancient Scottish regalia, understanding the weight of history these artifacts represented. The crown of Scotland, with its distinctive arches and precious stones, seemed to whisper tales of medieval kings and queens who had worn it during coronation ceremonies in the very hall where they now stood. William examined the Stone of Destiny with particular interest, knowing its significance in his own future coronation. The guide explained how this ancient symbol of Scottish kingship had traveled between Scotland and England for centuries, finally finding its permanent home in Scotland in 1996. Catherine listened intently, asking thoughtful questions about the stone's journey and its importance to Scottish national identity. Their tour included the Great Hall, where Catherine admired the impressive hammer-beam roof and collection of medieval weapons. She paused before a display about Mary Queen of Scots, studying a portrait of the tragic monarch who had once walked these same corridors. The parallels between royal women across the centuries were not lost on her, and she reflected quietly on the responsibilities and challenges that came with her own position. The highlight of the castle visit was meeting with members of the Royal Regiment of Scotland. These proud soldiers, many of whom had served in conflicts around the world, stood at attention as Catherine and William reviewed their ranks. The regimental mascot, a Shetland pony named Crucham IV, seemed particularly taken with Catherine, nuzzling her hand as she offered him an apple. Catherine spoke at length with the soldiers' families, many of whom lived on the castle grounds. She learned about the unique challenges of military life, from frequent relocations to extended deployments. One young mother, Lisa, shared her struggles with raising two small children while her husband served overseas. Catherine listened with genuine empathy, offering words of support and admiration for the sacrifices military families made. The regimental band performed a special concert in the castle's courtyard, their kilts swaying as they marched in perfect formation. The stirring sound of bagpipes echoed off the ancient stones, creating a moment of pure Scottish magic. Catherine was visibly moved by the performance, particularly when they played a lament for fallen comrades. She stood with perfect posture, her blue coat a striking contrast against the gray stone walls, as the haunting melody filled the air. Following the castle visit, their convoy descended into Edinburgh's new town, where Georgian architecture created elegant streetscapes that had changed little since the 18th century. Their destination was the Scottish National Portrait Gallery, where a special exhibition had been arranged showcasing portraits of influential Scottish women throughout history. Catherine walked through the galleries with genuine fascination, studying paintings of queens, writers, scientists, and revolutionaries who had shaped Scotland's story. The gallery's director, Dr. Sarah Macpherson, guided them through the exhibition with obvious pride. She explained how each portrait represented not just an individual, but a piece of Scotland's cultural evolution. Catherine was particularly drawn to a portrait of Flora MacDonald, the Jacobite heroine who had helped Bonnie Prince Charlie escape after the Battle of Culloden. The painting captured Flora's determined expression and noble bearing, qualities that resonated deeply with Catherine's own sense of duty and service. In the contemporary section, Catherine discovered portraits of modern Scottish women who had broken barriers in fields ranging from medicine to space exploration. She spent considerable time studying a painting of Dr. Maggie Aderin Pocock, the space scientist whose work had inspired countless young people to pursue careers in STEM fields. Catherine made a mental note to invite Dr. Aderin Pocock to one of her future events promoting science education for girls. The gallery visit included a workshop with local art students who were creating their own portrait exhibition celebrating unsung heroines from Scottish history. Catherine rolled up her sleeves, temporarily removing her elegant coat, and joined the students at their easels. Her attempts at portrait painting brought laughter and encouragement from the young artists, who were delighted by her willingness to try something completely outside her usual expertise. One student, Fiona, was working on a portrait of her grandmother, who had been one of the first women to work in the Scottish shipyards during World War II. Catherine listened intently as Fiona described her grandmother's strength and determination, working alongside men in dangerous conditions to support the war effort. The story reminded Catherine of her own grandmother's service during the war, creating an instant connection between the two women. As evening approached, Catherine and William made their way to the Royal Mile's historic heart for their final Edinburgh engagement. The street was lined with traditional shops selling everything from tartan scarves to authentic Scottish shortbread. Catherine stopped at several establishments, her blue coat creating quite a stir as shopkeepers and customers alike gathered to meet her. At a traditional weaving shop, Catherine watched master craftsmen creating authentic Scottish tartans using techniques passed down through generations. The rhythmic clacking of the looms created a soothing soundtrack as she learned about the significance of different patterns and colors. The shop owner, Mr. Robertson, explained how each clan had its own unique tartan design and how these patterns had helped identify Scottish warriors on ancient battlefields. Catherine was invited to try her hand at the loom, and despite the complexity of the process, she managed to weave several inches of fabric under Mr. Robertson's patient guidance. The resulting cloth, though imperfect, would be kept by the shop as a treasured memento of her visit. Mr. Robertson promised to complete the piece and donate it to charity, continuing the tradition of royal patronage supporting good causes. The afternoon's final stop was at a traditional Scottish bakery that had been serving Edinburgh for over 2 centuries. The warm, yeasty aroma of fresh bread filled the air as Catherine and William were welcomed by the baker's family. They learned about traditional Scottish baking techniques and sampled fresh oatcakes, tablet, and shortbread that had been made that morning. Catherine was particularly interested in the story behind the bakery's famous Edinburgh Rock, a sweet confection that had been perfected over generations. The current owner, Mrs. Broley Campbell, shared family recipes and techniques that had never been written down, passed instead from mother to daughter through hands-on teaching. Catherine appreciated this connection to tradition and the importance of preserving cultural heritage through food. As they prepared to leave Edinburgh, Catherine reflected on the afternoon's diverse experiences. From ancient castles to contemporary art galleries, from military traditions to artistic innovation, she had gained a deeper appreciation for Scotland's rich cultural tapestry. The blue check coat that had started the day as a fashion statement had become a companion through this journey of discovery. The crowds that gathered to see them off were larger than those that had greeted their arrival, word having spread throughout the city about their engaging and accessible approach to the visit. Children waved Scottish flags while adults called out messages of support and affection. Catherine took time to acknowledge as many people as possible, her warm waves and genuine smiles creating lasting memories for everyone present. Their next destination lay in the Scottish countryside, but the experiences of Edinburgh had already enriched their understanding of Scottish culture and identity. Catherine carefully folded her blue coat as they settled into their car, knowing that tomorrow would bring new adventures and opportunities to connect with the Scottish people. The rapid-fire nature of their tour meant constant movement, but each stop had provided meaningful moments of connection and discovery. William squeezed her hand as Edinburgh's skyline receded behind them, both of them energized by the warmth and enthusiasm they had encountered throughout the day. Scotland was proving to be everything they had hoped for and more, with each interaction strengthening their bond with this remarkable country and its proud people. The morning mist clung to the rolling hills of the Scottish borders as Catherine and William's convoy wound its way through ancient countryside toward their next destination. Catherine gazed out the window at the dramatic landscape, her blue check coat carefully arranged beside her as she prepared for another day of meaningful encounters. The borderlands held special significance in Scottish history, having witnessed centuries of conflict and cooperation between Scotland and England, making it a particularly poignant location for their visit. Their first stop was a working sheep farm nestled in a valley that seemed untouched by time. The farmer, Donald MacLeod, had been raising border Leicester sheep on this land for over 30 years, continuing a tradition passed down through 5 generations of his family. As Catherine stepped out of the car, she was immediately struck by the peaceful beauty of the setting and the obvious pride Donald took in his land and animals. Catherine had specifically requested to include working farms in their itinerary, recognizing the crucial role agriculture played in Scotland's economy and culture. She had spent considerable time preparing for this visit, reading about sustainable farming practices and the challenges facing rural communities. Her genuine interest in agricultural issues would soon become apparent to everyone present. Donald led them through fields where hundreds of sheep grazed peacefully, their wool thick and healthy in the crisp autumn air. Catherine listened intently as he explained the seasonal rhythms of farm life, from lambing in spring to shearing in summer and breeding preparations in autumn. She asked thoughtful questions about everything from feed management to wool quality, demonstrating a level of knowledge that surprised and impressed the experienced farmer. The farm's border collies champion herding dogs named Ben and Moss performed a demonstration of their remarkable skills. Catherine watched in fascination as the dogs responded to Donald's whistle commands, moving the sheep with precision and intelligence that seemed almost telepathic. When invited to try giving commands herself, Catherine's attempts brought laughter from everyone present, including the dogs, who seemed bemused by her inexperience but charmed by her enthusiasm. William joined a group of local farmers who had gathered to discuss the challenges facing Scottish agriculture. Climate change, international trade uncertainties, and changing consumer demands had created pressures that required innovative solutions. The farmers spoke candidly about their concerns, appreciating the opportunity to share their perspectives with someone in William's position who could potentially influence policy decisions. Meanwhile, Catherine spent time with the farmer's wife, Margaret, learning about the role women played in farm management. Margaret explained how modern farming required expertise in areas from animal husbandry to digital marketing, as farms increasingly sold directly to consumers through online platforms. Catherine was impressed by Margaret's business acumen and the way she balanced traditional farming wisdom with contemporary commercial knowledge. The farmhouse kitchen became the setting for an impromptu cooking lesson, as Margaret demonstrated how to prepare traditional Scottish farmhouse dishes using ingredients produced on their own land. Catherine rolled up her sleeves and joined in preparing cultic skink, a hearty soup made with fresh vegetables and barley. Her enthusiasm for hands-on participation delighted Margaret, who had been nervous about entertaining such distinguished guests. Their conversation revealed the deep connection between food production and cultural identity in rural Scotland. Margaret explained how recipes had been passed down through generations, each family adding their own variations while maintaining essential traditions. Catherine shared her own interest in cooking with fresh, locally sourced ingredients, finding common ground despite their very different backgrounds. The farm visit included a tour of the dairy operation, where Catherine learned about sustainable farming practices that protected the local environment while maintaining productivity. The farmer's son, James, who had recently returned from agricultural college, explained innovations in pasture management and animal welfare that represented the future of Scottish farming. Catherine was encouraged by his passion and optimism, seeing in him the next generation of agricultural leaders. After bidding farewell to the MacLeod family, Catherine and William traveled deeper into the Borders region to visit a restored medieval abbey. The ancient stone ruins stood majestically against the autumn sky, their Gothic arches and crumbling walls telling stories of medieval monks who had once made this remote location a center of learning and spirituality. The abbey's curator, Dr. Weston Fawson, Elizabeth Morrison, guided them through the archaeological site with evident passion for its history. She explained how the abbey had been founded in the 12th century and had flourished for over 400 years before falling into ruin during the Scottish Reformation. Recent restoration efforts had revealed spectacular medieval artwork and architectural details that had been hidden for centuries. Catherine was particularly fascinated by the abbey's scriptorium, where medieval monks had created illuminated manuscripts that preserved classical knowledge through the Dark Ages. Dr. Morrison showed them reproduction pages from manuscripts that had been created at the abbey, their intricate designs and beautiful calligraphy representing hundreds of hours of patient, devoted work. Catherine examined the delicate artwork with the appreciation of someone who understood the dedication required for such meticulous craftsmanship. The abbey's herb garden had been recreated based on archaeological evidence and medieval texts, containing plants that the monks had grown for medicine, cooking, and religious ceremonies. Catherine walked among the carefully tended beds, learning about the medicinal properties of various herbs and the sophisticated understanding of plant-based healing that medieval monks possessed. The garden's peaceful atmosphere provided a moment of quiet reflection amid their busy schedule. Their afternoon destination was a community center in a small border town that had become a model for rural regeneration. The town had faced significant challenges as traditional industries declined, but local residents had worked together to create new opportunities centered around tourism and artisan crafts. Catherine and William's visit was intended to highlight successful examples of community-led development in rural Scotland. The community center buzzed with activity as local artisans demonstrated traditional Scottish crafts that had been adapted for contemporary markets. Catherine watched a master blacksmith creating wrought iron artwork, her blue coat providing a striking contrast against the dark forge as sparks flew around them. The smith, Robert Burns, no relation to the poet, he joked, explained how ancient metalworking techniques could create modern decorative pieces that found markets around the world. In another workshop, Catherine observed textile artists creating contemporary interpretations of traditional Scottish patterns. The weavers explained how they researched historical designs in museums and archives, then adapted them for modern clothing and home furnishings. Catherine was impressed by their creativity and business sense, seeing how cultural preservation could also drive economic development. The center's pottery studio showcased work by local ceramicists who drew inspiration from the border region's landscape and history. Catherine tried her hand at the potter's wheel, her first attempts resulting in lopsided vessels that brought laughter from everyone present. The master potter, Sarah Thompson, guided her hands with patient instruction, helping her create a small bowl that, while imperfect, represented her personal connection to Scottish craftsmanship. A group of local musicians had gathered to perform traditional border ballads, songs that told stories of ancient raids, romantic adventures, and heroic deeds. Catherine listened with genuine interest as they explained how these ballads had preserved oral history for centuries, passing down stories from generation to generation through melody and verse. The haunting beauty of the music, accompanied by fiddle and accordion, created an emotional connection to Scotland's turbulent past. The community center's success story was embodied by its manager, Jennifer Anderson, a young woman who had returned to her hometown after university to lead the regeneration project. Jennifer's enthusiasm and vision had transformed a struggling community into a thriving example of what could be achieved through determination and cooperation. Catherine spent considerable time discussing Jennifer's strategies and challenges, recognizing leadership qualities that deserved broader recognition. As evening approached, Catherine and William attended a special dinner at a local restaurant that epitomized the farm-to-table movement in rural Scotland. The chef, Malcolm Stewart, had built his reputation on creating sophisticated dishes using ingredients sourced entirely from border farms and producers. Every element of their meal could be traced to its local origin, from the lamb raised on nearby hills to the vegetables grown in the restaurant's own garden. The dinner brought together representatives from all the communities they had visited during their border tour. Farmers, artisans, musicians, and community leaders shared their stories and aspirations over a meal that celebrated the region's agricultural bounty. Catherine found herself engrossed in conversations that ranged from sustainable farming techniques to the challenges of maintaining cultural traditions in a rapidly changing world. The restaurant's success story paralleled that of many businesses they had encountered throughout the day. Malcolm had left a successful career in Edinburgh to return to his rural roots, bringing urban sophistication to countryside dining. His restaurant had become a destination that attracted visitors from across Scotland and beyond, proving that rural businesses could compete on quality and innovation rather than just price. During dinner, Catherine learned about collaborative efforts among border communities to promote the region as a destination for cultural tourism. Local councils, businesses, and community groups had worked together to create touring routes that highlighted historical sites, artisan workshops, and natural attractions. Their cooperation demonstrated how rural areas could pool resources to compete with more famous tourist destinations. As they prepared to leave the borders region, Catherine reflected on the day's experiences. From traditional farming to innovative craftsmanship, from medieval history to modern community development, the border region had revealed itself as a place where past and future coexisted harmoniously. The blue check coat that had started the morning pristine now bore traces of their adventures, a few sheep hairs from the farm visit, a small burn mark from the blacksmith's forge, and clay dust from the pottery studio. These imperfections seemed appropriate symbols of her genuine engagement with Scottish life and culture. Catherine had not merely observed from a distance but had participated actively in each experience, creating authentic connections with the people and places they visited. The rapid pace of their tour meant constant movement, but each stop had provided meaningful insights into Scottish identity and values. Their next destination awaited in the Highlands, promising new adventures and opportunities to connect with Scotland's most iconic landscapes and communities. Catherine carefully folded her blue coat, now seasoned with the experiences of the day, knowing that tomorrow would bring fresh challenges and discoveries in their continuing exploration of this remarkable country. Dawn broke over the Scottish Highlands with breathtaking magnificence as Catherine and William's convoy climbed through mountain passes that seemed to touch the clouds themselves. Catherine pressed her face to the window, watching golden sunlight paint the peaks in shades of amber and rose. Her blue check coat lay carefully arranged beside her, ready for another day of discoveries, in Scotland's most dramatic and culturally rich region. The Highlands represented the heart of Scottish identity, where ancient traditions lived on in communities that had weathered centuries of change while maintaining their distinctive character. Their first destination was a Highland Games event in a village nestled between towering peaks and a crystal-clear loch. The Games represented one of Scotland's most beloved traditions, bringing communities together to celebrate athletic prowess, cultural heritage, and social bonds that stretched back generations. Catherine had attended Highland Games as a spectator before, but today she would participate as an honored guest, learning about the deeper significance behind the colorful spectacle. The village of Glencoe had been preparing for weeks, transforming their modest community center grounds into a festival site that buzzed with excitement. Local clans had traveled from across the region, their distinctive tartans creating a rainbow of colors against the Highland backdrop. Catherine emerged from her car to the sound of bagpipes and drums, the stirring music echoing off the surrounding mountains with an emotional power that sent chills down her spine. The games began with the traditional opening ceremony, where clan chiefs in full Highland dress presented their banners and pledged their loyalty to the gathering. Catherine watched with fascination as centuries-old protocols unfolded before her, understanding that she was witnessing living history rather than mere entertainment. The ceremony concluded with the lighting of a ceremonial flame, symbolizing the continuation of traditions that connected contemporary Scots with their ancestral heritage. Catherine's first challenge came at the Highland dancing competition, where she had volunteered to present prizes to the young competitors. The dancers, ranging in age from 5 to 18, performed with incredible skill and precision, their feet moving in complex patterns that had been perfected over generations. Catherine was mesmerized by their grace and athleticism, particularly impressed by a 10-year-old named Morag, whose performance of the Highland Fling displayed talent well beyond her years. When the dancing master, Hamish MacLeod, invited Catherine to try a few basic steps, she accepted with characteristic grace despite her elegant attire. The blue check coat was carefully removed and entrusted to William's care as Catherine attempted to master the fundamental positions of Highland dance. Her efforts, while far from expert, earned enthusiastic applause from the crowd and delighted laughter from the young dancers, who offered patient instruction and encouragement. The heavy athletics events showcased the raw power and skill that made Highland Games famous worldwide. Catherine watched in amazement as competitors hurled massive stones, tossed wooden poles end over end, and demonstrated feats of strength that seemed to defy human limitations. The caber toss, in particular, captured her attention as athletes attempted to flip enormous wooden poles in perfect straight lines, a feat requiring precise timing, tremendous strength, and years of practice. Between events, Catherine mingled with competitors and spectators, learning about the training regimens and cultural significance behind each discipline. Many participants were farmers, construction workers, and tradesmen who maintained their athletic pursuits alongside demanding full-time jobs. Their dedication to preserving Highland traditions while managing modern responsibilities impressed Catherine deeply, representing the same balance between heritage and contemporary life that characterized Scottish culture. The pipe band competition brought together musicians from across the Highlands, their synchronized performances creating waves of sound that rolled across the glen like musical thunder. Catherine listened intently as the pipe major explained the intricate techniques required for competition-level piping, from breath control to finger positioning to the subtle musical expressions that separated good pipers from great ones. The haunting melodies of ancient Scottish airs transported listeners to earlier eras when pipe music had accompanied warriors into battle and mourners to gravesides. William joined the stone-putting competition, much to everyone's delight and his own initial reluctance. His attempts, while respectable for a novice, fell well short of the distances achieved by seasoned competitors who had been perfecting their technique since childhood. The good-natured ribbing he received from the athletes created moments of genuine camaraderie that transcended social boundaries, demonstrating the egalitarian spirit that characterized Highland Games culture. Catherine's interest in the cultural aspects of the games led to an invitation to judge the traditional storytelling competition. Competitors ranging from children to elderly clan historians shared tales that had been passed down through oral tradition for centuries. Catherine listened with growing appreciation for the art of storytelling, recognizing how these narratives preserved historical memory and cultural values in ways that written records could never achieve. One story told by an 80-year-old woman named Isla McPherson recounted her grandfather's experiences during the Highland clearances, when families were forced from their ancestral lands to make way for sheep farming. The emotional power of Isla's narrative, delivered in a mixture of English and Gaelic, brought tears to Catherine's eyes and deepened her understanding of the historical struggles that had shaped Highland identity. The games concluded with a spectacular display of clan unity as hundreds of participants and spectators joined hands for the traditional farewell song. Catherine found herself between a burly caber tosser and a young Highland dancer, all three swaying in rhythm to the haunting melody that seemed to rise from the very soul of the Highland landscape. The moment crystallized her growing appreciation for Scottish culture and the ways communities preserve their identity across generations. Their afternoon journey took them deeper into the Highlands, where they visited a traditional whiskey distillery that had been operating continuously for over 2 centuries. The distillery, nestled in a valley where mountain streams provided the pure water essential for whiskey production, represented Scotland's most famous export and a crucial element of cultural identity. Catherine had requested this visit to learn about the craftsmanship and tradition behind Scotland's national drink. The distillery master Alastair Campbell guided them through the production process with obvious pride in his craft. Catherine learned about the careful selection of barley, the precise timing of fermentation, and the art of distillation that transformed simple grain into liquid gold. The massive copper stills gleamed in the afternoon light, their distinctive shapes having remained unchanged for generations because tradition demanded continuity in every aspect of production. In the aging warehouses, Catherine walked among rows of oak barrels containing whiskey that would not be ready for consumption for another decade or more. The master explained how Scottish climate, Highland air, and the interaction between whiskey and wood created the complex flavors that distinguished genuine Scotch from imitators worldwide. The patience required for quality whiskey production impressed Catherine as a metaphor for Scottish character itself. Deliberate, careful, and willing to wait for excellence. The tasting session revealed Catherine's natural palate for whiskey appreciation, much to Alastair's delight. She could distinguish subtle differences between samples aged in different types of barrels and appreciated the complex interplay of flavors that developed over years of patient aging. Her thoughtful questions about production techniques and quality standards demonstrated genuine interest that went far beyond polite curiosity. William's enthusiasm for the engineering aspects of distillation led to detailed discussions about the precise temperature controls and timing required for consistent quality. The distillery's combination of traditional craftsmanship and modern precision technology fascinated him, representing the successful integration of heritage and innovation that characterized successful Scottish businesses. Their visit included meeting with local farmers who supplied barley to the distillery, learning about the agricultural foundation that supported whiskey production. These farmers had worked with the distillery for generations, their families' fortunes intertwined with the success of this single product. Catherine appreciated the complex web of relationships that sustained rural Highland communities, where traditional industries provided stability and identity in an uncertain modern world. The distillery's gift shop had been transformed for their visit into a showcase for local artisans who created whiskey-related crafts and artwork. Catherine examined hand-carved whiskey glasses, artistic bottle holders, and paintings inspired by Highland landscapes. Each piece represented hours of skilled work by craftspeople who maintained artistic traditions while adapting them for contemporary markets. As evening approached, they visited a Highland estate where they would spend the night before continuing their tour. The estate, privately owned but managed according to sustainable principles, demonstrated how traditional Highland land use could adapt to modern environmental concerns while maintaining economic viability. Catherine and William were greeted by the estate manager, who had prepared a special evening program, showcasing Highland culture and hospitality. The estate's great hall had been decorated with clan banners and Highland regalia for a traditional sealid, a social gathering featuring music, dancing, and storytelling. Catherine had changed from her travel clothes into evening attire, but her blue check coat remained prominently displayed as a symbol of her Highland adventure. Local musicians, dancers, and singers had gathered to perform traditional Scottish entertainment for their distinguished guests. The Sela began with group dances that included everyone present, from the estate staff to visiting dignitaries. Catherine joined enthusiastically despite her limited experience with Scottish country dancing, relying on patient instruction from local partners who guided her through the intricate steps with humor and encouragement. The dancing created an atmosphere of warmth and inclusion that broke down social barriers and created genuine connections. Between dances, Catherine listened to traditional Scottish songs performed by local musicians whose families had been keeping Highland musical traditions alive for generations. The combination of ancient melodies and contemporary arrangements created bridges between past and present that resonated deeply with her growing appreciation for Scottish culture. She found herself humming the tunes long after the performances ended, the melodies embedding themselves in her memory. The evening's highlight was a special presentation by Gaelic language students from the local school, who performed poetry and songs in Scotland's ancient Celtic tongue. Catherine listened with fascination to the musical qualities of spoken Gaelic, understanding why efforts to preserve this endangered language were so important to Highland identity. The students' pride in their linguistic heritage was evident in their confident performances and eager explanations of Gaelic cultural significance. As the Seliath continued late into the evening, Catherine reflected on the remarkable diversity of experiences that had filled their Highland day. From athletic competitions to cultural performances, from industrial traditions to artistic craftsmanship, the Highlands had revealed themselves as a region where ancient traditions thrived alongside modern innovations. Her blue check coat, now resting in their guest room, had witnessed authentic Scottish culture in ways that few outsiders ever experienced. The rapid pace of their Scottish tour had not diminished the depth of their engagement with Highland communities. Each encounter had provided insights into the values, struggles, and aspirations that defined contemporary Scottish identity while honoring ancestral heritage. Catherine felt privileged to have participated so directly in Highland life, from dancing at the games to tasting whiskey in ancient warehouses to joining community celebrations in estate halls. Tomorrow would bring their final day in Scotland, but the Highland experiences had already secured a permanent place in Catherine's heart and memory. The blue check coat had indeed dazzled throughout their Highland adventures, but Catherine's genuine enthusiasm and respect for Scottish culture had created the lasting impressions that would endure long after the photographs faded and the media coverage ended. The final morning of their Scottish adventure dawned with exceptional clarity, revealing the full majesty of the Highland landscape in crystalline detail. Catherine stood at the window of their Highland estate accommodation, watching mist rise from the loch, like ethereal dancers performing their farewell routine. Her blue check coat hung nearby, now seasoned with memories of their remarkable journey through Scotland's most treasured regions. Today would bring their tour full circle, ending where it had begun, emotionally if not geographically, with encounters that would crystallize their understanding of Scottish character and values. Their first destination was a conservation project in the Cairngorms National Park, where Catherine would learn about efforts to preserve Scotland's natural heritage for future generations. The project represented collaboration between government agencies, private organizations, and local communities working together to restore damaged ecosystems while maintaining traditional Highland ways of life. Catherine had specifically requested this visit, recognizing environmental conservation as crucial for Scotland's long-term prosperity and cultural identity. Dr. James McLennan, the project's lead scientist, met them at the visitor center with barely contained enthusiasm for his life's work. He had spent 20 years developing innovative approaches to Highland conservation, combining cutting-edge science with traditional ecological knowledge passed down through generations of Highland residents. Catherine listened intently as he explained how climate change, tourism pressures, and land use conflicts created complex challenges requiring collaborative solutions. The first stop was a forest restoration area where native Caledonian pine trees were being replanted after centuries of deforestation. Catherine walked among young saplings that would eventually grow into the magnificent ancient forest that had once covered much of the Scottish Highlands. Dr. McLennan explained how these forests had supported diverse wildlife communities and provided sustainable resources for Highland communities before being cleared for agriculture and timber production. Catherine joined volunteer conservationists in planting several saplings, her hands working alongside local school children who visited regularly to monitor the growing trees. The children explained their adoption program, where each student cared for specific trees and tracked their growth over time. Catherine was moved by their dedication and understanding of environmental stewardship, seeing in them hope for Scotland's ecological future. The project's success depended heavily on collaboration with local landowners, many of whom had initially viewed conservation efforts with suspicion. Catherine met with several farmers and estate owners who had learned to balance traditional land use with environmental restoration. Their stories revealed how economic incentives, scientific support, and patient relationship building had transformed potential conflicts into productive partnerships. Wildlife monitoring represented another crucial aspect of the conservation project, with camera traps and tracking studies revealing the return of species that had been absent from the highlands for decades. Catherine examined photographs of red deer, pine martens, and golden eagles that had been captured by motion-sensitive cameras throughout the restoration area. The images provided compelling evidence of ecosystem recovery and the success of science-based conservation approaches. The highlight of their conservation visit was an encounter with a family of red deer that had become habituated to human presence through careful wildlife management. Catherine stood motionless as these magnificent animals grazed peacefully nearby, their presence representing the successful restoration of natural highland ecosystems. The moment provided powerful symbolism for the entire Scottish tour, demonstrating how respect and patience could create harmony between human activities and natural processes. Their journey continued to a coastal fishing village on the west coast, where Catherine would learn about Scotland's maritime heritage and the challenges facing traditional fishing communities. The village of Mallaig had been a fishing center for centuries, its harbor filled with boats that ventured into the North Atlantic to catch fish that sustained highland communities and supplied markets throughout Britain. However, modern fishing faced pressures from environmental change, international competition, and regulatory challenges that threatened traditional ways of life. The harbor master, Captain Donald Mackenzie, greeted them with weather-beaten hands and eyes that reflected decades of experience reading highland weather and sea conditions. He had been fishing these waters for 40 years, following traditions passed down from his grandfather and great-grandfather, who had also made their living from the sea. Catherine listened with genuine respect as he described the skill and courage required for successful fishing in some of the world's most challenging waters. Catherine was invited aboard a traditional fishing vessel that had been specially prepared for their visit. The boat's captain, Moira Stewart, was one of only a few women skippers in the Scottish fishing fleet, having fought hard to establish herself in a traditionally male-dominated industry. Her success had inspired other women to consider fishing careers and demonstrated how traditional industries could evolve while maintaining their essential character. On deck, Catherine learned about sustainable fishing practices that balanced economic needs with environmental protection. Captain Stewart explained how modern fishing vessels used sophisticated technology to locate fish while avoiding overfishing that could damage marine ecosystems for future generations. The careful balance between tradition and innovation impressed Catherine as characteristic of successful Scottish adaptations to contemporary challenges. The fishing village's processing facilities showcased how traditional skills had adapted to modern food safety and quality standards. Catherine watched workers preparing fresh catch for distribution throughout Scotland and beyond, their expert knife work and quality assessment representing generations of accumulated knowledge. The facility's manager explained how traceability systems allowed consumers to know exactly where their fish had been caught and how it had been handled, building trust in Scottish seafood quality. Local fishing families shared their stories of seasonal rhythms, extended absences at sea, and the tight-knit community bonds that sustained them through difficult periods. Catherine learned about the role of fishing wives and families in managing shore-based aspects of the industry. From equipment maintenance to business administration, their resilience and adaptability impressed her as examples of Scottish character traits that enabled communities to thrive despite challenging circumstances. The village school had developed innovative programs connecting maritime heritage with modern education, teaching children about marine science, navigation, and sustainable fishing practices alongside traditional academic subjects. Catherine joined a classroom session where 10-year-olds demonstrated their understanding of tide patterns, weather forecasting, and fish biology with enthusiasm that suggested some might follow their families into fishing careers. As afternoon approached, Catherine and William made their way to Glasgow for the final major engagement of their Scottish tour. Scotland's largest city represented the modern, urban face of Scottish identity, where traditional culture intersected with contemporary innovation in business, arts, and education. Their visit would highlight Glasgow's transformation from industrial powerhouse to cultural and educational center, while celebrating the enduring Scottish values that connected city and countryside. Glasgow School of Art had prepared a special exhibition showcasing how Scottish artistic traditions influenced contemporary creative work. Catherine walked through studios where students explored everything from traditional textile design to cutting-edge digital media, finding inspiration in Highland landscapes, clan histories, and cultural traditions that remained relevant to modern artistic expression. The school's reputation for innovative design and artistic education had attracted students from around the world while maintaining distinctly Scottish character. In the textile studio, Catherine observed students creating contemporary fashion designs based on traditional Scottish patterns and techniques. Their work demonstrated how ancient tartan weaving could inspire modern clothing that appealed to international markets while preserving cultural authenticity. One student, Jenny Ross, explained her graduation project exploring sustainable fashion production using traditional Scottish materials and techniques, adapted for contemporary environmental concerns. The digital media studio showcased how Scottish stories and legends provided inspiration for modern entertainment. From video games to virtual reality experiences, students had created interactive narratives based on Highland folklore, allowing users to experience Scottish history and culture through immersive technology. Catherine was impressed by their creativity and technical skill, recognizing how traditional storytelling could reach new audiences through contemporary media. The visit concluded with a special ceremony at Glasgow Cathedral, where Catherine and William attended a service celebrating Scottish heritage and the connections between Scotland and the wider Commonwealth. The cathedral's ancient stones provided fitting surroundings for reflection on their remarkable journey through Scottish communities and cultures. The service included readings in both English and Gaelic, music from Highland and Lowland traditions, and prayers for the continued flourishing of Scottish people and places. Following the service, Catherine and William joined community leaders from across Scotland for a farewell reception that brought together representatives from every region they had visited. Farmers, artists, teachers, business owners, conservationists, and cultural leaders gathered to share their experiences and express appreciation for the royal couple's genuine engagement with Scottish life and culture. The conversations at the reception revealed common themes that had emerged throughout their tour: pride in Scottish heritage, determination to adapt traditions for contemporary circumstances, and commitment to community values that prioritized collective well-being over individual advancement. Catherine reflected on how these values had been evident in every encounter, from Highland Games athletics to fishing village cooperation to urban artistic collaboration. As evening fell, Catherine and William prepared for their departure from Scotland, their hearts full of memories and their understanding of Scottish identity profoundly enriched. The blue check coat that had begun their journey as a carefully chosen fashion statement had become a symbol of authentic engagement with Scottish culture and communities. Its slight imperfections from hands-on participation in Scottish life represented the genuine connections they had formed across the country. Their final moments in Scotland were spent at Glasgow Airport, where they were seen off by representatives from every community they had visited. The departure lounge had been decorated with flowers and banners representing different regions and traditions, creating a colorful tribute to Scottish diversity and unity. Catherine took time to speak personally with each representative, sharing specific memories from their visits and promising continued support for Scottish causes and communities. The flight back to England provided opportunity for quiet reflection on their remarkable Scottish adventure. Everything gazed out the window at the Highland landscape below, now familiar from their ground-level exploration, understanding how geography had shaped Scottish character and culture over centuries. The rapid-fire pace of their tour had somehow allowed for deep engagement with Scottish life, creating lasting memories and genuine appreciation for Scottish contributions to British heritage. William reached for Catherine's hand as they flew south, both recognizing how their Scottish tour had exceeded all expectations for meaningful cultural exchange and authentic community engagement. The blue check coat, carefully folded in their luggage, had indeed dazzled throughout their journey. But Catherine's genuine curiosity, respect, and enthusiasm had created the lasting impressions that would benefit Scottish communities long after the media attention faded. Their Scottish adventure had demonstrated how royal visits could transcend mere ceremony to become genuine cultural exchange that benefited everyone involved. Catherine's willingness to participate fully in Scottish life, from Highland dancing to sheep farming to whiskey tasting, had created authentic connections that would influence her future work and maintain her special relationship with Scotland for years to come. The tour had been a resounding success, leaving both visitors and hosts enriched by their shared experiences.